Hello, welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather. I just got in from milking. We're getting quite a bit. I only have a few babies that I have recently pulled in order to bottle feed them, but for the most part, I haven't been taking any of the babies off. And I'm very happy to report that I think I have figured out how to make yogurt, raw milk yogurt, without heating anything up, quite simply and very, very affordably. So this is the consistency of the yogurt that I've been making. We really enjoy like a Greek style yogurt, super thick like this. There is a measure of tang, but it's not like super, super strong, very smooth, really, really good. See? That's what we're going for. That's what I've been going for probably a year and a half. I've been trying to figure yogurt out. I think I got it. I get asked about this big funnel all the time and what milk filters we use all the time. I will put links to both of these down in the description box. These funnels do come with a little ring that hooks the milk filter to the inside. Because we have such fine dust here, one milk filter is not enough, so I have to use two, and the little ring doesn't work. It's too much bulk, so I just rubber band it to the outside like that. All of this milk that I've just poured out of that one can was from our goat Clover, who just kidded a few days ago. She still has her babies on, but she makes a ton of milk. And Clover is an AA protein producer. I tested some of my goat's hair last year, and she makes quite a lot of the casein protein. And so we get quite a lot of cheese out of Clover, and I think that matters with this yogurt making process because it's technically a cheese, what I've done and turned into yogurt, but it's really good. Like I said, I'm using raw milk and I've put in some mesophilic cultures. So it looks like I've gotten just over a half gallon of milk out of Clover with her twins on. Now, when I first started making this Chev cheese yogurt, I was using those Chev cheese packets that you can get from the New England cheese making company. And what I failed to realize, what I haven't really known in the past, gosh, probably 3-ish years that I've been using those packets, is that the packets come with a little bit of powdered rennet on the inside. And what rennet is, it's a coagulating agent. I was having the hardest time trying to culture my Chev cheese using like a previous batch. It just wasn't firming up like Chev does. And now that I understand that those packets come with rennet, that makes a lot of sense, because when I was reculturing the previous batch, I wasn't adding in more rennet. So I'm sure the mesophilic cultures and things were working their way through the milk. They just weren't the type of cultures that create a curd in and of themselves. So if you're going to be following along with me and making this, and you're going to start out using one of those packets, you don't need to add any additional rennet. Actually, you shouldn't, because if you have too much rennet going into this recipe, your yogurt is going to squeak. I know that sounds strange, but that is the best descriptor that I can come up with for it. You don't want to have too much rennet. So just need to strain the last bit of this milk, and then we'll get into the process. One of the important things though is that we don't want our milk to start out cold. This literally just came out of the goat, and it comes out of the goat at around 102, 103 degrees. A mesophilic culture likes to culture around 86. This will work between probably about 80 and 90 degrees. I've gotten this to work well. And most of the time, that is what my milk temps at this point. So I have not tried to scale this recipe up past a gallon. Things might change a little bit as far as rennet quantity. If you do a little bit more, I will experiment more with this summer, and I'll update in the pinned comment and then in the description box a recipe for like a 2-gallon batch, because I know for larger families that could be helpful. Now, we're only temping at 73 degrees right now. Oh, 75. I would like to still try this and see what happens. I did have an ice pack in one of my cans that I had the milk in today, because we are starting to get warm. I'm filming this at the end of February, and it's quite warm outside actually. So let's see how it goes, regardless of it being a lower temp than I said was ideal earlier. So what I have here, this is a previous batch of Chev. At this point, if you use the powdered Chev culture, you would just add that in, let it sit for about 2 minutes, thoroughly stir it in, and then cover it and let it sit overnight. And then in the morning, that's what you would have is Chev cheese. This here is my previous batch of yogurt, and I'm gonna use this in order to culture. Isn't that gorgeous? Look how smooth it is. So pretty. I will say that this is the yogurt before I added anything to it. I've been adding honey to it to sweeten it, but this is just plain. Now, in order to mix this up real well and get that culture well incorporated, I am gonna blitz this with my immersion blender. And previously, this is where I had stopped in my attempts to reculture a batch of Chev, and this is where I went wrong. It does need some rennet. Okay, what I have here is a cup of non-chlorinated water. That is important because I don't want the chlorine in tap water to affect the cultures that we have going on here. And I also have vegetable rennet, and I do believe that it is important that this be vegetable rennet. I have not done a lot of experimenting with the animal rennet that I do have, but one of our channel members let me know that vegetable rennet is a little bit less active than the animal rennet, and again, we don't want our yogurt to be squeaky. Squeaky curds are good for cheese. It's not good for yogurt, so if you can get yourself some vegetable rennet, this is a little bit less intense. And we literally just want 1 drop. So we've got to go slow. If 2 drops go in, I don't want to use it because I'll get squeaky curds. So at that point, I'll dump it out and try again, but just go slow. There's our drop. And as far as off the farm costs, at this point, that is it. 1 drop of rennet. So it makes a little bottle like this last a really, really long time. Give it a swirl, and then just gonna stir it in. Water and all. This is going to take a while to set. Right now it's 4:30 in the afternoon here, and what I do is just leave this covered on the counter overnight, and then we'll strain it in the morning. Okay, so it's been quite a while. It's been longer than overnight. Right now it's just after 11 in the morning, and this is not necessary for it to sit this long. It just happened to, and that's okay. So if we look down in here, you can probably see the line in between essentially the curds and whey. We've got nice clear whey on top, and then we do have this curd at the bottom. What we need to do now is separate the curds and whey by straining. What I have here is a cloth called butter muslin. This is kind of hard to find. I have looked for it in other places, but I've only been able to reliably find it on the New England Cheesemaking Company website. I will link that. This is what you want as opposed to something like cheesecloth. The cheesecloth has a much wider weave. I actually don't prefer cheesecloth even for cheese making. Like with hard cheeses, I use butter muslin for everything, and so I would get your hands on some of this. It's got this nice fine weave right here that isn't gonna allow the really small curd to pass through. We want the whey to come through, not the curd. Now I did just take this to the sink and wet it and wring it out. That's gonna help the whey pass through the butter muslin more easily. It's kind of a messy process, but you gotta make a mess or it doesn't count, right? Sometimes it pours out easier than other times. Ooh. Come on. There we go. As you can see, even though the temperature of the milk was cooler than it really is preferred, this did set up quite nicely. This is what we're looking for at this point. The thickness of the yogurt is going to depend on how long you hang it. The longer it hangs, the more whey is going to drip out, and the thicker the yogurt will be. You want to be able to catch the whey. I wouldn't necessarily hang this over a sink, not just because whey has a lot of amazing uses around the farm, but if you do happen to strain out too much whey and you want your yogurt to be a little thinner, you can always add in whey after the fact. So what I'm gonna do is actually just hang it right here on my cabinet handle, and then just because the fly season. We're not in fly season yet, but it's a habit for me to just make sure that there's no openings where any little flies can get in. I will add either one of these chip clips or like a clothespin to the top. There we go. And I'll leave it like this for around 3 or 4 hours. Usually that's enough time for the thickness of yogurt that we like, which is like Greek yogurt. Side note too, just because every time I hang some cheese from the cabinet, somebody says that I'm going to make my cabinets droop or be uneven. I've been doing this for several years, many times a week, and so far the cabinet seems okay with it. While this is hanging, you want to kind of poke at it and make sure that the yogurt is the consistency that you like. It will thicken as it chills, but sometimes while it's hanging, little pockets of whey will get stuck and be a little bit hidden, and so you want to kind of poke up on it and release those. You can even give this a squeeze if you like, but right now I've got a steady stream of whey coming out, and that's what I like to see, so I'm just going to leave it. Alrighty, so it's actually several hours later. It's 4 o'clock again. And so this has probably sat for a little longer than I like, but we'll see. Up to this point, this is the exact process that you'd use to make chev cheese. And so that's what we have at this point. And I use this cheese a lot. I use it really any way that you would use cream cheese. And I even make ice cream with this chev. I do have a playlist of all the things that we've made with our goat's milk. It's a very common misconception that you can't make as many things with goat's milk as you can with cow's milk, and I'm here to tell you that you absolutely can. You just might have to do things a little bit differently. This yogurt is an example of that. I have tried and been somewhat successful to make yogurt using common cultures that you would use to create yogurt out of cow's milk, and for some reason the goat's milk yogurt comes out kind of snotty. It's got a really gross texture. I can't explain it. Tip when using butter muslin: when you are done with it, you want to rinse it right away. If you allow whatever dairy product of choice to get dried into the cloth, you're gonna have a heck of a time getting it out. So I will rinse it out immediately and then just hang it like on my oven or on my dishwasher door until it's dry, and then I stick it in the laundry. Okay, so yeah, we've got chev here. If I wanted to keep this as chev, I absolutely could. I would add probably about a teaspoon of salt to this, stir it up, and chev freezes very, very well. So in theory, if you wanted to put a bunch of chev away and then thaw it out, maybe add some cream or some milk or some whey to it later to make yogurt, I'm gonna guess that you could, but you may not want to salt it first. I don't salt the chev at all when I'm making yogurt. So because I can tell this went a little longer than I like for yogurt consistency, I am just gonna add a little bit of this whey back. I'm gonna go slow. I really like a thick yogurt, and I don't want it to go too soupy on me because we do also add honey as our sweetener, and that loosens it up a little as well. Pull out the trusty immersion blender again, and this one is really nice. This immersion blender has a bunch of different settings. It goes from low all the way up to high, and I feel like I've got a second immersion blender. I feel like that immersion blender isn't as powerful as this one, and I don't know if that other one would work as well to get a super smooth texture. But this one's by Cuisinart. I really like it. My mom sent this to me. I've got it on full blast, and we're just going to be smoothing this out. Now it's almost completely smooth, and at this point, while I'm blending the last little bit up, that's when I'm going to add my sweetener, which is probably about a 1/4 cup of honey. This is fall honey from our honeybees. It's very dark. It looks like molasses, has a really wonderful nutty full flavor. Ooh, that was a lot. I can think of worse things than too much honey. And that's the consistency we have. Lovely, thick, and creamy. Because this is going to thicken up a little bit in the fridge, I'm just going to add the tiniest bit more whey just to increase our volume a little. We did get quite a bit. This was 1 gallon of milk. Now, you may have noticed I didn't pull out any chev to use in the next batch before I added the honey. The reason being is I have a couple subscribers that have told me that they have recultured their Chev using the whey. And so that is what I've done with tomorrow's batch. This is our lovely yogurt. As of right now, it's gonna thicken up after I chill it. And a lot of people are probably gonna ask me, how long does this last in the refrigerator? I have no idea. We have gone through this incredibly fast. We got about 6 cups worth of yogurt. And when it's me and the kids having breakfast in the morning, this is exactly as much yogurt as we go through in one breakfast. So my answer to that is, it'll last as long as it will until it goes bad. Usually with things like yogurt, you'll notice things growing on them. And so at that point, I wouldn't eat it. So let's go ahead and taste today's batch, shall we? Oh, so smooth and so creamy. And to me, this feels more accessible than maybe your traditional way of making yogurt. I have never liked the process of yogurt. A lot of the recipes say that you need to pasteurize your milk first and then bring the temperature down to around 115, then add your yogurt cultures and try to incubate that at about 115 degrees all night long, and then you can strain it and sweeten it and add it to the refrigerator. I really like that this process results in a very lovely, very, very creamy yogurt without having to heat up my milk, destroying the enzymes and destroying all of the good raw milk properties that's in here. People will probably ask too, could you make this with store-bought cow's milk? I haven't tried, but I'm gonna say that the answer is yes. I know that you can use those Chev packets to make Chev with store-bought cow's milk. You just have to heat it up to 86 degrees, add your culture, and at that point it can stay at room temperature. You don't have to try to incubate it at 86 all night, and you can go through the same process. And in theory too, once you do that with the packet, you should be able to reculture it either with the whey or with like an unsweetened and unsalted about 1 cup batch of the Chev or the finished yogurt. So I'm gonna go ahead and fridge this. We are going to enjoy it very soon. If you get a chance to try this, let me know what you thought. I'll see you guys again soon.